One of the progressive features of that, which you find from section 64, you find in section 64, section 65, section 65A, and section 65B of the Electoral Act, is that each one of these 5 centers must post the result of the election outside the polling station. So you, I mean, outside the center. So you start with the polling station. It must post the result outside each polling station. So on election night, after the polling stations have closed at 7 p.m. and everyone who was at the queue has been given the opportunity to vote, and then the vote is done and the counting is done, each of the 10,985 polling stations must put the result out. Now, if you are a credible opposition, it means you have 10,985 V11s with the result. And if you are an organized opposition, you should get each one of those results sent to you. And you should have an app that then puts them together and adds the 10,985 for the presidential election and tells you who has won, because it is the result of all the candidates. That's one center. The next center is the ward center. You go to the ward center, and there are 1,985 collation centers, which bring all the polling station returns, the V11s. And when they are done, they also put their result outside. So you have 1,985 results of your presidential election in posted outside. You add 1,985, you know who has gotten what, because you get your guys to send it to you. And these election returns, which are called V23As, are sent to the constituency center. And when you are at the constituency center and you have finished, and the V23As that have come from wards have been added together, you have 210, just 210, V23Bs for the whole country, which are posted outside. Those your people should get those V23Bs, for goodness sake. Add them together and tell you what the result is. Why would you fail to add 210 V23Bs alone? And when they are done with these V23Bs, the next center is the provincial center. They take 210 to the each one to its province, and they count. Then you get 10 V23Cs, which, if you add these 10, you have the result of the presidential election.
Yeah, these are the provinces. Yeah.
Yes, and they take the provinces, the V23Cs, to the National Command Center. They add them, and you have one V23D, just one. Before they announce you, when you are counting there, you the election agent, you have it. So your party, if it is competent, has 5 centers with results. It is the polling stations, 10,985. It is the ward collation centers, 1,958. It is the constituency returns, 210. It is the province, 10, and it is the National Command Center, 5. Each one of these should add to the same number.
Right.
Even before ZEC announces. But do you know what? I've been crushed, as I've been saying. You know, the candidates, they wait. I can understand why Maduk waits. And I can understand why Togo, Kupe wait, and all these others. Because they don't have polling agents there. So they don't know. They will be like waiting for ZEC to tell them. No credible political party has to wait for ZEC to tell them. You have the results. The law enables you to do that. And when they say don't announce it, it will take
what is legal is the announcing.
Sorry?
So in other words, what is illegal is the announcement of the result, not for you to get the result.
Yeah, but it's nonsense. No, but I would say I'm not announcing the result, but I can tell you, I can tell my parties that we have received all our reports from our polling agents, and this is what they've reported us.
Right.
And you know, you can't lose an election in that kind of a situation unless you are really losing. Because why empower ZEC and you want them to announce? Can you imagine? Do we really need someone tomorrow morning to announce that today is July 22? I mean, sorry, today is June 22.
Yeah.
Do we need anyone to announce to us tomorrow is June 22?
No.
Or today is June 21. Yesterday was. No, it's a fact that we arrive at. And the process of the law leads you to facts that must become indisputable. And where there are disputes, they will be very grounded. But that has to do with the political parties. In my opinion, still in pursuit to the question you raised, how do we make sure we do? You know what? You can't have democracy in a society that does not make it its business to have democracy. In a society which makes it appear like the responsibility of democracy is on this individual, that individual, and so forth. No, when you find yourself in a society where people say, oh, we are in this situation because of so and so and so and so, that is absolutely nonsense. Can you imagine what would happen in America if the absence of democracy were to be put on the shoulders of individuals?
Yeah.
Can you imagine what Trump would have done? Can you imagine what McConnell, Mitch, the former majority leader in the Senate, would have done? And can you imagine all these people in America who continue with the big lie as individuals of members of the Republican Party? They continue to say Trump won.
Right.
Can you imagine that situation being, you know? Society must itself take responsibility for its values, its laws, and its institutions. Society must not say, if ZEC steals the election result from Nelson Chamisa, it's Nelson Chamisa's problem. Agatadzaka, he didn't put polling agents in every polling station. So it's his business. Democracy is not the business of the participants. It is the business of the society. It is society that must be democratic. You may have lunatics as individuals who come and go, but surely you don't put it on the shoulders of the individuals. Ah, we have this because this one did this. Hey, we have this, you know. Society, therefore, it is, you know what? Maduku doesn't put all the candidates, yet he submits his name in order to enable rigging. But why does Zesny not put candidates in all the constituencies who are enough to be credible to say we were in every constituency and this is the outcome? Why is civil society lacking a capacity to independently ensure that the progressive constitutional and electoral act provisions are implemented in letter and spirit? Why half measures? In any society that does not protect and ensure that its laws are implemented, especially those laws that have to do with societal values like choosing those who govern.
Right.
Civil society must not matter or concern itself about who is governing us, but it must be concerned by the fact that whoever is governing us has the consent of the people.
Mm.
Civil society may not care that you voted for this party or that party, this candidate or that candidate, but it must care that the vote was done in the procedural and the legal manner that is provided in the law, so that you don't have criminals running laws. The best and only watchdog of electoral conduct and electoral practice is civil society. For want of a better term, it's society itself. As long as society is prepared to tolerate rigging, the practice of rigging will continue regardless of the law. And there will never be a law that prevents people from violating the existing law.
If I'm to get you well, Professor, would it then be fair for Zimbabwe to enact a law that says any candidate that does not support or supply enough polling agents should not then be qualified for an election? Is that a better interpretation of what you're trying to put across?
No, I mean, don't ask me that. You draw your conclusion. I've just told you.
Yeah.
You know, if society, yeah, you know, and for me, if you find that we have become so incapable that now there must be a law which says you must put if there's 10,984, I mean 10,985 polling stations, put that number or times whatever number in each and every polling station in order to qualify. That is no longer a democratic society. Mm-hmm. That is because it doesn't guarantee that when you put those numbers, those people will exist. That the names you have put there, you are not, you know, democracy is action-based. Democracy is praxis. Democracy is what we do as people in interacting with each other and how we do it. And it must be the real thing. It must be the real drama. It's not a paper and pencil exercise. It's the reality. It's about values.
In Excel Get one of the things that you spoke about was the leakage in as far as election results transmission process is concerned, coming in from the polling station, coming into the ward, all the way to the constituency, where we have got a V11 coming in from the polling station, and then we have to go to the constituency where we now have got the
V11 from the polling station to the ward.
To the ward,
yeah. Which one? And then the province, and then the national command center.
Exactly. Of which that is the constitutional procedure of how elections, election results should be announced. In Excelgate, you made a point that this procedure was not followed, but rather most of these results, they were collected somewhere stage number 4 and 5, where V23Bs were now just being counted together. If you may help us understand exactly what you meant happened or transpired in your own analysis.
It's not even in my own analysis. You know, the famous saying, which used to be common among founding nationalists and the larger Pan-African movement, is that they used to say, if you want to hide something from an African,
put it in a book.
Yeah, or from a black person, for that matter. Just put it in a book.
Put it in a book.
The moment it's in a book, the black guy just would not read it, moves on. I mean, they used to say that.
Yeah.
The disclosure that ZEC did not conduct the election in accordance with peremptory must do provisions of the Electoral Act is contained in ZEC's report on how it conducted the 2018 elections, and that report done as required by Section 323 of the Constitution, and that report tabled in Parliament in June 2019. In that report, ZEC says in black and white and in diagrammatic terms that the results from 10,985 polling stations, therefore the V11s or the polling station election returns, were transmitted from polling stations to ward collation centers, ward counting centers. And they were counted there, these results that were contained in 10,985 V11s, and they were summarized, put into 1,958 V23A forms, or they were put into ward election returns. So the polling station election returns were put into ward election returns. In terms of Section 37C of the Electoral Act, these must now go to these must now go to constituencies. These 1,958 V23As, or these ward returns, must now go to constituencies, processed there, collated there, counted, after which they must go to provinces, processed there, counted, after which the next is the National Command Center. So it's A, B, C, D, E. And this must be done. So ZEC says in its report, when we got to the ward, without going to C and D in order to get to E, we created or invented a new route, and they use the word route, way, a new route, which is not the route that is prescribed in the law. Or, if you want, we diverted the presidential election results and separated them from the parliamentary election result, even though it's a harmonized election. So we disharmonized the election and diverted the presidential election from wards straight to Harare. Whereas the parliamentary elections results went through.
Was this legal?
Huh?
Was it even legal?
Do you understand what is meant by peremptory? It means you have no option but to follow the route. The moment you create a new route and a new destination, you have abandoned the legal process that is required. You have no option. So ZEC actually abandoned Nzira. Ndova yaita maitiro ayo, madiro ayo. Yakabva yaita madiro a Georgina.
Citing what reasons? On paper, what reasons were cited?
And the story continues. So they divert from the wards straight to the National Command Center, Harare. And they turn that National Command Center in Harare into a giant polling station. They start counting V11s in Harare, and they start counting V23s. And they have 20 or so people who are doing that, and they are using an Excel spreadsheet, and they start on the 1st of August. Only them and God and their bosses know exactly which V11s are these. How, I mean, can you imagine counting V11s in Harare? And why are you counting them? Because they are supposed to be counted at polling stations and then collated at ward centers. And the story of V11s ends there at ward centers. And you start with V23As, which are taken to constituency centers, and those V23As are counted, and then their story ends there. You get V23Bs, which are then taken to the province, and then there the story ends. There are V23Cs, which must now go to the National Command Center, and they should be concerned with those. And the fact that each electoral center has its own election return or V form makes it possible to cross-check the result. But if the command center is now doing what was done at polling stations and is doing afresh and is using an Excel spreadsheet, which is not even an election return, is not provided for in any law. That's what rigging was. And I want you to pay attention. This disclosure is in the report prepared by ZEC. It's put in a book in order to hide it from an African.
ZEC themselves in full admission.
Yeah. Did they do it as a transparent disclosure? Was this done by the bureaucrats to expose the commissioners and others who are rigging? My guess is as good as yours. Save to also say that's exactly what they did in 2013 as well. The 2013 report discloses that, unlike this other one, the 2013 report makes it clear that the results of polling stations were sent to ZEC by SMS. So they already knew when they get the SMS, because what you should ask is a very obvious question. Why did ZEC divert the result from ward stations straight to the National Command Center to be recounted and have the National Command Center dating its hands and doing the collation that is supposed to take place at other centers there? Why did that happen? That happened because the polling station results were SMSed, were fax mailed, were sent electronically to the center, and they discovered they've lost big. And to subvert that result, which was in the server, they decided to divert the results from ward centers straight to the command center. And they were boasting that we are counting at the command center, we are counting V11s, we are counting V23s, and they never say they are counting V23Bs. They are counting V23As. And they don't say we are counting 1,958 V23As or we are counting 10,985 V11s. We're just counting V11s. We are counting V23s. Mawana Kupi. And how long would it take for ZEC there to set itself up as one polling station to count 10,985? These other polling stations take a few hours because each one is counting an average of no more than 1,000 ballots. Do you mean, can you imagine if ZEC is really counting the V11s in Harare, and there are 10,985. Can you imagine the scene of 10,985?
residue files? Yeah.
Did anyone see 10,985 ballot? I mean, sorry, 10,985 V11s stacked up there in Zeke and counting and so forth and putting on an Excel spreadsheet. It's absolute crap. Everyone associated with Zeke, either as a commissioner or an officer, really must get out. If this bunch of people who ran the 2018 election at Zeke is the same group that is going to run the 2023 elections, then God help the country. God help Zimbabwe.
Prof, let me take you to a very sensitive and important aspect of that election as well, as far as vote collection is concerned. What is your comment towards the issue that also there was a UNDP server that had been administered with ZEC, and this UNDP server also was receiving real-time results, and it proved also that Nelson Chamisa had gathered 66% of the votes. Was there such a server? And there was also, I understand that they also subpoenaed, there was a court subpoena that wanted to use this ZEC server results as part of their presidential election petition. Your comments towards this issue?
Well, I mean, I deal extensively with these issues about the server and about the subpoena in Excelgate. I already alluded to this.
For the benefit of you who are watching this, yeah.
I said the evidence and fact that the results were diverted from ward centers, 1,958 ward collation centers to Harare. There must have been a reason why they diverted that. And I said the reason is because they'd discovered from the data obtained in the polling stations, all of them, 10,985, that they'd lost. And that information from polling stations had been sent straight to the command center, National Command Center, to the servers. If you recall, after the result had been announced, the disputed result, Chamisa's lawyer, advocate Mpofu, was asked some question that was a redundant question about, oh, you know, how do you know Chamisa is one and so forth. He used an expression that many have not revisited or unpacked, that we are very sure and we have a nuclear option. And he used this phrase of a nuclear option. The nuclear option was not dependent on V11s or on any election return. It was dependent on the server. And they knew that if they can bring the server to court, sorry?
Which was the fulcrum of their argument.
Yes.
It wasn't based on the residue.
That was the nuclear option. To say, because the server shows the result, you could actually get the election invalidated, or even Chamisa declared as the winner, because the result of the server in the server was showing that Chamisa had gotten this 66% and Mnangagwa 33%. And all they needed to do was to subpoena the server. But Malaba blocked the subpoena. And ZEC lied that they did not have a server. And yet Mnangagwa's opposing affidavit concedes that there was a server and alleges that the server was hacked by people who must have been associated with Chamisa. As to whether there was a server or not, this is a mute question, because we know about the UNDP server that the previous ZEC chairperson, Justice Makarao, confirmed existed, and that it is used for keeping data on voters and voting. But more importantly, we have information which is in the public domain that actually ZEC put up a tender for a server in 2017, toward the end of 2017, and that tender was won and awarded to an American, or by an American, was not by an American company, awarded to an American company to supply the server. They had an American server, and there was a dispute over that server. There was a Chinese company that wanted to provide it, and that Chinese company went to court and challenged ZEC and the tender board. And the Chinese company lost around February of 2018. So, this kind of mafia-like arguments that ZEC makes, oh, we don't have a server, or if you think we have a server, prove it, and so forth. Can you imagine a body that is supposed to be transparent challenging a citizen to say, well, it's you, it's in on your shoulders to prove? All this is fictitious. Clearly, a winner is determined in terms of election returns, not in terms of the server. But the server is relevant because it has information that we can compare with what is in the election returns or the V forms. And if there's a server that says, this is what we have gotten from the polling stations and or from the ward, and we know from the ZEC manuals that the polling stations send directly to ZEC National Command Center the results, then the server becomes relevant evidence. And this relevant evidence was blocked by Malaba, and Malaba came up with fictitious arguments that were made by ZEC to say in Zimbabwe, the transmission of election results is wholly manual, when Section 67 of the Constitution makes it clear that the results must be notified to the National Command Center, at least from the constituency. And they were. I think that there may be a legitimate point that says there would have been really no legal basis of declaring a winner on the basis of the server. But the one inescapable fact about the server is that the results clearly warranted the invalidation of what ZEC announced as the result. And we know ZEC announced different results. You know, it found it okay to change the results and announce different ones for the presidential election, but and alleging miscounting, errors in counting. But it made miscounting or errors in counting in Chegu to West, which up to today they have not changed. They admit, yes, we did not count correctly there, but they have not changed to say, sorry, we announced this X, but it should have been Y, like they did with the presidential result. And the fact that they're like that just shows that these guys lack the necessary credibility.
True. In such a circumstance, Prof. Moyo, does it then matter who wins the vote, or it matters the most who announces the votes? Because it seems, obviously, you have given more examples, and the Cheguti issue is a quite crystal clear one. So in such an election, does it matter who wins, or it matters who announces who wins?
Both are important. But as I have indicated, the candidates, the political parties, and civil society have a duty to protect the will of the people. Society in Zimbabwe, the constitution says executive authority, legislative authority, and judicial authority are derived from the people. If judicial authority comes from the people, and legislative authority also comes from the people, and as does executive authority, then the people have a responsibility to organize themselves in such a way that when that authority is threatened by any of the arms of government to which they would have invested it, they must reclaim it. But you can't reclaim it without a basis. So you must have the competencies to objectively assert the vote and to then defend that vote.
Okay, nice. Some people would argue and say, okay, what other evidence do you have that there was a 66%? Because this is definitely a scientific figure. Some people have argued and say, where else is this 66% except your ghost server that does not exist anyway? How would you respond to such?
It's irrelevant, the figure. That 66% is actually irrelevant. And equally irrelevant is what ZEC announced. The moment the electoral body violates the peremptory provisions of the Constitution or of the Electoral Act as to how they must conduct an election, whatever result is produced is invalid. It doesn't matter what you say. What is compelling and indisputable and beyond any doubt, even an unreasonable doubt, is that ZEC diverted the results of the presidential election, separated them from the rest of the election, disharmonized the election, took these presidential results, used a different route with a different destination, and went down to Harare to claim to be collating them, is invalid, is illegal. No legality can come from an illegality. No validity can be the outcome of an invalid process. So whether ZEC tells us it's 2, it's 3, it's irrelevant. And so the issue of the 63% is relevant to explain why they diverted the presidential result, why they created a different route and a different, destination. So the point is, ZEC blatantly, brazenly, outrageously conducted the 2018 presidential election in violation of the law, substantial violation of the law, such that what they did in purporting to be counting V11s and V23As or collating them at the National Command Center, that whole process of 20 people doing that in Harare was void, of no force or effect in terms of the law.
Interesting, Prof. Going forward, we are going to be going for another election plebiscite come 2023, which is exactly a year left from now. You mentioned quite some very strong points of making sure that there are enough polling stations, polling agents across all the national polling stations, and making sure that the people should be ready to protect their votes. Those are very strong points that you have mentioned there. Should we have a free and fair election in Zimbabwe? Do you think that the current establishment, number one, is ready to give up power to whoever wins the next election? Number two, is there anything more that you think needs to be done to make sure that the next vote is going to be protected? I think those are going to be probably maybe my last questions before we call it wrap.
Yes, I have no reason, and no one, I imagine, can have any reason to believe that the establishment will be willing to concede to any defeat. They said that they did not carry out a coup in order to give up the power. They did not use the bullet to give way to the ballot, and everybody understands that. But there is no power greater and bigger than the power of the people who are ready and who know what they are fighting for or what they are defending. We have seen this around the world, and there's nothing to suggest that somehow the Zimbabwean situation is unique and is different from Sudan and so forth. So the needful has to take its course. But as to what the people should do, I don't think we really need to complicate the fact. We have to stay the course. The people must do what the law provides, and they must defend what they do in terms of that law. And when they do that, the result is guaranteed. It is assured. There's no way. You see, for Zimbabweans, honestly, if you take into account the fact that 41 years, and by the next election, if that is due in 2023, it will be 43 years since independence. To believe that there is a rational Zimbabwean who thinks that if they vote for Zanupf again in 2023, the situation will change for the better at long last, after all these elections. And in particular, if you go by the current message of the authorities, what they are basically telling the voter is that in 2023, you must vote for ZANU-PF in order to benefit in 2030, when the country becomes an upper middle income economy. So vote for us in 2023 so that
you see the results in
2030. This is preposterous. That's why this 2030 so-called vision is the fraud of the century. Because you tell people whose majority, at least according to World Bank figures, 7.9 million people, that is 8 million people, live on income which is less than $1 US dollar, $1.90 a day, less than that. So you want to tell me today I'm extremely poor? You want to tell me, yeah, we understand, but in 18 months, vote for us, because our vision is that our country will be an upper middle income country in 2030. It's not only fraudulent, it's criminal. And it will be very difficult to imagine anyone voting for such criminality. So that definition, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, is now in front of every rational Zimbabwean. It's no longer whether Nelson Chamisa will do better than Emerson Mnangagwa, or whatever vehicle he's going to use is better than Zanupf. What is clear is that you've got to do something different. And voting for Mnangagwa and voting for Zanupf is not different. It's what has been happening all these years, but it's even worse. So do something different. And this is why, you know, people didn't get the message that the former late President Mugabe said on the eve of the last election in 2018, that when I look at this, I can't vote for those who tormented me. And I can't vote for the Maduku strategy or this talk, there's no one else. I face the reality that the objective choice for the better is to vote for Nelson Chamisa. Now, the Zimbabweans are facing the same thing. Are you going to vote for the tormentors? Or you will vote for an alternative? And you are guaranteed something different. You are guaranteed. There is absolutely no doubt whatsoever from a rational point of view that if you vote for Chamisa, you will get a different result. No doubt. Zimbabwe right now needs to break the logjam. In all practical terms, ZANU-PF has come to summarize everything that has gone wrong and has tried every trick in the book. And some ZANU-PF people, and I will include myself as a former one, had expected that President Mugabe will be succeeded by something different. And they were sure about that. But they've actually gotten the same, they call themselves the Second Republic, but they're actually just the second round of the First Republic.
Just before we let that one rest, Prof. Moyo, how would you respond to allegations that you've also been part and parcel of this same system? All these things that you are condemning today, you are part and parcel of this.
No, not all these things. Not all these things.
Okay, during the time when you were Minister of Information and then the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Science and Technology, specifically while you were still the Minister of Information, a lot of Zimbabweans blame you for the ills of the period. I know you've spoken a lot about this, but how do you distinguish or distance yourself from most of these human rights violations and issues against Zimbabwean human rights, since we are also part and parcel of the same establishment?
Well, I deny that I was part and parcel of the same establishment. I was part and parcel of the Mugabe establishment, which they said they, well, not they said, they actually ousted violently in a military coup. So I really want to clear one thing. People like saying, oh, same establishment. It's not. They even don't call themselves the same establishment. They are different. They came through a military coup. We opposed them before they even assumed power. They came up with a command agriculture, which was an agriculture. We called it for what it is. And these are the architects of the things that we were opposing. They know we were opposing them. And so we are not part of them. But if you want to raise issues about me having been part of the Mugabe regime on 2 occasions from 2000 to 2005, early 2005, and then from mid-20 or late 2013 to November 2017, this is a reality. I accept. It's a fact. As far as the information portfolio is concerned, yeah, when I came back in 2013, I considered that there had been certain actions and polarization that happened between 2000 August and February 2005, which were unfortunate, indefensible, and we needed to depolarize. And we set up a process which we called the IMPI process, which came up with far-reaching progressive measures to depolarize the media first and foremost, but the intention was also to depolarize society. But there are certain fundamental things that we did in the early period, which I'm really, really proud of, much as I regret some. I'm very proud of the work we did for the land reform and the defense of that land reform. We had a non-violent defense of the land reform based on what loosely some call the Wondo Yeminda outreach program. I make no apology about that. I'm very proud of it. I associate myself with that part of the land reform and the essence of the land reform itself. And are there issues that need policy focus? Yes, about productivity, fairness, and so forth. But the liberation struggle was about reclaiming the land rights of Zimbabweans. And I'm proud to have been associated with that reclamation. We never believed or participated in any violence ourselves. Never. We're not interested. We worked with the artists, we worked with the communities, we worked with the farmers, and it was important for someone to defend it. And I defended it, and I'm happy. It was also important to restructure the means of communication. A lot of people say things about ZBC, oh, you did this, what. They forget what the ZBC was in 2000. There was no ZBC. It had been cannibalized, it had been personalized, and it had become a cesspool of all sorts of corruption. It had over 1,000 employees when it needed less than 400. But it had an impossible wage bill, could not afford to pay. It was owing everyone right, left, and center, but in particular content providers from overseas, and who needed to be paid in foreign currency, and it was not affording. And the lawyers were touching the equipment and so forth. And it was not a station for 20 years that was rooted in communities. So for me, it was important to do two things. One, to devolve it and take it away from Harare into the communities. And we did that. And two, to make it relevant to content providers in Zimbabwe by coming up with a local content policy. A lot of people want to say it was 100%. I'm cool with it, but the law and the policy was 75%. So to devolve it to the communities required unbundling it into different business units and the stations. We put NTV in Bulawayo, and put SFM in Bulawayo. We put Power FM in, from Harare to Gweru. We put it in Gweru. And I'm very proud of that. And the fact that they rebundled after I had left, shows that the problem lay somewhere else. But
The problems did not change during that time. There was a major problem of polarization where state-owned or public broadcasters specifically they sang one tune of one party state or supporting only one state. During the GNU, we all knew that there were two seniors or superiors, the prime minister and the president. But your administration came up with songs like kwekutanga kuna Mugabe kwechitu kuna
you know, which but you see, you guys also sometimes you destroy an argument that you are making. Now you are attributing Zinza Webster Shamu Kwandiri. You know, Mbare Chimrenga, what those are Webster Sham songs. They have nothing to do with me. And those songs were actually popular during the GNU. You know, Mbare Chimrenga, hey, kuna po, yeah.
Yes,
And then that's what Sham is. I never was involved in that. I was I had nothing to do with that. I was not even in government when that was happening. Kana uchida kucomplain about zvangu taura zwana tamba woga zwana who else would Andy Brown maybe taura majingles and I defend that up to this day. I'm very happy with that. You know, but is number 9, number 10, or what are some of the stuff, you know, is as always. There's Webster Sham na George Taramba. Why do you put on my shoulders? Are you guys afraid of them? You know? Are you?
I guess a lot of things have really happened specifically.
Saying those things didn't happen in GNU times. No, that is the GNU music. Yeah,
True, definitely. It was actually made to belittle Morgan Tsvangirai so that it was seen like no one when it was a government of
propaganda. But that's not true. That was very prominent when Webster Sham was number 1 National Commissar for Zanupf and number 2 Minister of Information. And Comrade Sham. Yeah. Each one must carry his cross. Munoda to make me answer for everybody, including Jonathan Moyo and Posa. The Zimbabweans who say that I crafted Posa, I have absolutely no respect for them. Because that's when they show their true colors of hatred, because it is a blatant lie. And when some of the lawyers who should know better, including the MPs, when Wana Koltat, Nana, Professor Ngove, and so forth, keep quiet about that. I just feel that there is a certain degree of dishonesty in Zimbabwe. That, you know, like in my case, I just get the impression that because I can string certain sentences together in English, I must be blamed for everything. You know, I'm happy to even I take responsibility for it. But the truth of the matter is, it was passed by a joint committee. First, it was crafted in Parliament by a joint committee, yes, Zanu, MDC, and unanimously voted with no objection. And there was no roll call for the vote. You know, why should the MPs who were there not take responsibility for that?
Interesting.
But otherwise, you know, when in my second coming in fact, I wanted to add 2 things which to me are very important in accepting the essence of your question, that there were things that went wrong in the first run for me as Minister of Information, which we acknowledged, and we visited all media houses to acknowledge that and to commit to working together. And we produced the IMPI report, and the IMPI report is the basis of the reforms that have happened. We started that. Secondly, people complain, hey, you did this, you did that. I'm the only one who brought people from the independent media to Zim Papers.
True.
I brought Joram Nyati from the Zimbabwe Independent.
Yeah.
I brought Dudus Matutu from newzimbabwe.com and former Daily News. I brought Edmund Kudzai from the UK running a different website there. I brought, when the Nyakurero from Jomik was completely independent. Save for when they fired Joram Nyati. Why don't you hold them responsible for that? Joram Nyati came from the independent media because he was a good journalist, not because he was an ideologue. He was a professional journalist. Same with Edmund. Edmund was accused of being Babajuka, a CIO creation, was attributed to a citizen who is professional. Mduduzi was fired for republishing comments that were made about Mnangagwa in the Chronicle and some associated to Coltart, and he was fired for that. First, they removed him and put him to Siberia in Namibia there, and then they fired him. Now, I mean, what did people want me to do? If I can bring independent editors to the public media, what else do you guys want me to do? That's number one. Number two, and the last point, one day you will be told who was responsible for leading media stories for which those who investigated and wrote them know they got the information from Professor Moyo. There's one media owner who always likes boasting, hey, my media house, hey, what. One day, he's going to be ashamed when he learns that the biggest stories he beats his chest about came from Jonathan Moyo.
Indeed, it's been an interesting...
And you know what I should add? A lot of people who say, oh, Moyo, this and Moyo, none of them ever approached me during my tenure to do some things with me, and I refused. None of them. Those who came to me to work with me, we did a lot of good things. But all these people, hey, they never came to me. It's like they wanted me to sit in my office and guess what's in their heads. No one came to me. You never approached me, and so forth. And I'm not saying you are one of those who are complaining. No. I'm saying I wish people had evidence to say we approached Professor Moyo with this and he refused. Me, I approached people with a Guguraundi memorial bill and they refused to cooperate. Me, I did. In 2006, I did. But no one from MDC, civil society, especially those who make noise, hey, you did this, hey, you did that. They never, ever came to me to say, can we do this? And I want to tell you, and I assure you, and I have already indicated, there are some in the media, in the private media, during the most difficult times. Me, I had a certain relationship with the independent media from 1999, before I joined the government and Zanupf for that matter, up to 2017. I had a relationship with reporters and editors in the private media, whose story is yet to be told. They have a completely different, they are different witnesses from the nonsense that people say. Because they approached me and I cooperated with them.
Just on that point, hopefully, I don't know if it's a remark or it's going to be a closing question. People usually use a statement that Professor Moyo said, if you can't beat them from the outside, you have to beat them from the inside. You seem to be much more closer than many of the people outside Zanupf, and specifically even the private media, and you seem to have a diverse and different ideology from that of Zanupf, especially in the way you practice your politics. Was it your intent to also destroy it from the inside, as many people allege?
You know, the thing is that I genuinely wanted to reform Zanupf, not destroy Zanupf. I respected the fact that Zanupf brought together liberators and I still respect that fact. But the liberation struggle was about political rights. You can't fight a political struggle, win it, and then you destroy the foundation of that struggle. And I have said before, I was quite inspired by the fact that the transformation of the former socialist Eastern European countries, including the Soviet Union, was done by the members of those socialist communist parties or ruling parties. It was very inspiring. People like Yeltsin and so forth. I've said that. I've also been inspired by the fact that the transformation in Zambia that happened in 1991, the transformation in Malawi, the transformation in Kenya, was by people in the ruling party, former ruling parties. You know, MMD was UNIP. Patriotic Front, MMD, therefore UNIP. The same thing about Malawi. You can see the elements that are associated with the Malawi Congress Party, or what we have seen in Kenya, elements that are associated with KANU. We cannot found political movements in our part of the world which negate the historic development of our countries, especially in relation to the independence struggles and the liberation struggle. If you are not part of the nationalist project, it's very difficult to be relevant or meaningful in a country in Africa. Honestly, for me, that's a no-brainer. That is why I like, notwithstanding its ups and downs, what has been happening in Zambia, as I mentioned, in Malawi, in Kenya. That is the natural development. You can't have overnight stuff that is at odds and is with the local situation and is not rooted at the situation. Now, if the founding parties, founding leaders I don't want to reform or become irreformable or worse, become deformed, as we have found that Zanupf is, and as the situation in Zambia and so forth showed, then surely it ought to be possible to express the founding nationalist values elsewhere. Zanupf is a jacket and a vehicle, and vehicles get old, tired, useless, and they must be thrown in the scrapyard without throwing away the fundamental logic of who we are and our history. And that's why I said either you reform them within, and any reform is best pursued from within. When that fails, you must find an alternative.
Yeah, Prof. Moyo, a quick last one. Should you be invited into the next government of any new establishment, maybe led by Nelson Chamisa or any other new political party, do you still find yourself interested into joining Zimbabwean politics outside the ZANU-PF administration?
Just because a question is asked doesn't mean it should be answered, especially an irrelevant question. Why should I answer an irrelevant question?
Should you be offered a political seat in the new establishment? Are you going to be excited? Are you going to be, would you allow, would you accept, would you want to bounce back into politics?
Should I find a river that is flooded? Will I cross it or will I not cross it? I'm not in front of any river, and I don't have to imagine myself crossing any river. I just think that relevance in social analysis, public policy is very important. Relevance, you know, even in law, you only deal with relevant evidence, not all evidence. The evidence that you deal with must be relevant. So similarly, the question must be relevant. You know, I mean, I can't bring myself into thinking and engaging an irrelevant discourse. It's completely irrelevant.
Professor Jonathan Moyo, you have been answering all. It has been a pleasure to have you here. I think all of my questions you've managed to answer them, except my last question. But I do appreciate.
No, I'm answering. You asked me relevant questions, and I answered them. If in that discussion you had asked me how much do you have in your pocket and would you give it someone, I would have refused and said, but now you're asking me an irrelevant question. But you were very, very relevant until this last question of yours, which says, will you do this? Why? I mean, what has that got to do with the price of rice in China?
It's got everything. You are a political animal. You are a political animal. Should
no,
they,
no,
you know,
I mean, look, but you're asking me fully knowing that I'm not even a member of the MDC. I'm not a member of the...
No. Forget the MDC. Forget the MDC. I said any establishment, be it an MDC
that's why
or
that
maybe
becomes irrelevant. That's what makes it irrelevant. Because now it's a... What do you really think a rational...
Are you still excited about Zimbabwe politics? Are you still excited about taking any role in Zimbabwe politics?
If I was not excited about Zimbabwe politics, I would not have accepted your invitation to talk to you.
Definitely.
Because
any last words to our viewers right now, Prof? It's been exactly 3 hours, 20 minutes. Do you have any last words?
Yeah, I have respected your invitation and the issues that you put for me.
Yes,
and that's why I've made myself available. And you told me that you had wanted this discussion much earlier, and it became very important.
In 2017, actually. Yeah, in 2017. Yeah.
That's what has made it possible. It's not, and I'm alive to the fact that this has been a discussion about Zimbabwean politics, and I'm interested in the welfare of my country. Of course, that's why I'm here.
Right. Any last words, Prof, to our viewer just before we call it wrap?
No, I just think that what I find interesting about my country is there are some people who want power, and there are others who want change for the better. I'm praying that there will be a convergence between this, and then there will be a breakthrough should that happen.
Much appreciated. We do thank you so much, Professor Jonathan Moyo, who is not a stranger to Zimbabwean politics, and has been a very much active voice as far as Zimbabwean politics is concerned. We do thank you for more than 3 hours now. We've been talking about this, and to all our viewers who are watching us, we do thank you so much for joining us and taking your time to be with us. It has been www.techmec.tv. My name is Tonio. We do this each and every week, and of course this one we're going to be spreading across the week so that we all get to manage to fully digest what we've been talking about here. But for me and the crew behind the scenes, it has been a long one. Thank you so much to all our viewers who have been watching us. Let's do this each and every Tuesday as we're going to be coming back to you. Ciao, ciao from me. It's a wrap. Goodbye and thank you.